Hello everybody, welcome back to Blunt Ape. Today we are going to look at something that I've been seeing in the news on social media and investigate whether it's got sound reasoning behind it or not. I'm seeing it adopted by friends, strangers, government officials. The proposition embraced by many is, it's appropriate or reasonable to punish all Russians as a means to force Putin to stop the invasion of Ukraine. My goal was to understand the thinking behind this, establish the logical thread, to ask questions, to have dialogues with people supporting the proposition. This whole process, in fancier words, is called dialectics. I set out to do this because, personally, I reject any form of collective guilt and collective punishment. Every single time this was enacted in the past, it led to horrific outcomes. Even when it doesn't lead to bloodshed, entire portions of populations are displaced and affected for generations. Additionally, this type of treatment is specifically prohibited under the Geneva Convention. My first question regarding the proposition would be, how does collective punishment achieve the goal? The answers received can be summarized into, it's not like we can boycott Putin himself, so the solution is to put pressure on the population, make their life hard enough so that they start protesting against the war and the regime. The natural reaction to this would be, we are talking about a regime in which protesters are brutally beaten, incarcerated or killed. But we see a lot of Russians on TV supporting the regime. Considering the brutal treatment of protesters, the lack of free speech, is it not safer to keep quiet or to say that you agree with the regime? It's their leader, they have the responsibility to stop him. Any attempt at riots and regime change will lead to blood in the streets, especially in a dictatorship or oligarchy. Well, then they'll understand what Ukrainians are going through. This is where I normally specify to the other person that collective punishment is outlawed under the Geneva Convention, that punishing an entire population for what is decided at the very top is immoral and cruel. Moving on. What is the point of punishing Russian expats, Russian athletes, artists, etc.? It's important to send a message to show that the world stands against anyone supporting Putin. How are they supporting Putin? Most of them have not denounced the bloody regime. Most of them haven't voiced support of the regime either. The saying nothing means that you are pro-regime. It's their duty to stand firmly and publicly against Putin. What happens to them after they do that and return to Russia one day? Regardless, we need to stand against Russia's influence in the West. What if some of the Russian expats we're punishing are here because they fled the regime? If we're putting pressure on the Russians at home and we're also punishing Russians who've emigrated, how does that achieve the purpose of turning Russians against Putin? Eventually, they'll have no choice but to turn against Putin. If we isolate them and cut off all options, are they more likely to side with those who've turned against them or with their peers and their leader? In the end, while I understand people's reaction, their anger and desire to do something, the whole thing has slowly turned into indiscriminate action against all Russians. This reminds me of collective punishment received when I was in primary school, when the teacher didn't have the means nor the time to punish the actual person who'd done something wrong, so it was easier to just punish an entire classroom. In the long run, this simply made all the pupils hate the teacher, as the vast majority had done nothing wrong.